Welcome to the Rich Dad Real Estate Show, where we talk about the good news and bad news of real estate, hosted by yours truly, Jaren Sustar. I'm here with my good friend Cameron Cathcart today. Cameron was a youth pastor, which I can't wait to dive into because I think every male in my family is a pastor except for me and the black sheep. And then he decided to get into real estate, and he's done 500 plus deals on 65 doors and is absolutely crushing. And he's also the co-host of the Better Life podcast. Mm-hmm. If I said that incorrectly, let me know, with Brandon Turner, who's an OG from Bigger Pockets. Cameron, thanks for being on here.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We got to hang out in Denver in October, and it was like, I don't know, it's like I felt like I'd known this guy forever. I think part of it has to do with our background in faith and in church, and we kind of have a similar journey from that perspective. I didn't choose to be a youth pastor. I was a little bit smarter than you. I looked and I said, you know, they don't make any money and they do pizza and games all day long. You know, so I stayed away. But it's cool because, seriously, my dad's a pastor. My brother's a pastor. My grandpa's a pastor. My other grandpa's a pastor. My great-grandpa's a pastor. And then my other great-grandpa, I think, was a drunk. And so maybe I met in the middle of, you know, the pastor and the great-grandpa was a drunk. No, I'm joking. But I stayed away from it. But I understand that life. And so I'd love to like talk and dive into how in the world did you go from, all right, dude, we're doing full-time ministry, all bought in, to now we still love the Lord, of course, but we're doing all these real estate deals.
Yes. And so this is going to be a longer story. And so I apologize, Jaren, but I love this story, and it will give you me from being a youth pastor all the way to today. And so yeah, I was a youth pastor. Absolutely loved being a youth pastor. And I felt like we had known each other for a long time, just because, one, I think you and I, we're the two guys from the Midwest. Everybody else is on the West Coast. They've got their cool clothes, their cool tennis shoes, their tight jeans. You and I, we hunt. I grew up on a farm in Missouri on 700 acres and hunted every day. We were a lot alike. We connected really well, but my grandpa was a pastor, dad's a pastor, great grandpa a pastor. We're very similar in that. And so I was never like the person in high school that ran away from faith or anything like that. I honestly wanted to be a pastor. And I went to a school out in Colorado called Colorado Christian University. My wife and we got married at super young, went to school there, graduated, became a youth pastor. Absolutely loved my job. It was such a fun job, getting to work with students, and saw just so many cool things happen when I was there. But the entire time that I was there, I never made more than $40,000, and I absolutely loved the church. But I just knew that wasn't going to cut it. But at the time, my wife and I, we were young, and we could make it work. And it was, honestly, when you're young and you're not making very much money, there's a part of that that's fun. It's an adventure. Like, hey, how are we going to pay for our groceries next week? And I would go and I would drive for Uber, or I would, one of the things that I got into was getting on Craigslist free or Facebook Marketplace and finding free things, going and picking them up, bringing them home, and then trying to sell them for $50 or $100. And so, wow. Really enjoyed that. But when we had our first daughter, Riley, so I've got 3 kids, 7, 5, and 3. And we had our first daughter, Riley, back in 2017. I knew, like, hey, we got to figure something out, because it once you have a kid, it's no longer fun being broke. It's no longer fun standing in King Soopers or Safeway and wondering if your credit card or debit card is going to get declined. And so it's like, I got to figure something out. But I didn't have, like, even though we were broke, I didn't have that like moment, that tipping point moment where I had to figure something out. But when Riley, our now 7-year-old, when she was about a year old, so this was in the fall of 2018, we gave her peanut butter for the very first time, and she went into anaphylactic shock. And so, like, literally within minutes, she swelled up to like twice her size, was struggling to breathe. And we threw her into the car and we rushed her to the emergency room. And obviously, as like our daughter is not breathing in the car, we're not getting on our phones, looking up our health insurance, seeing where we should take her, where we shouldn't take her, all of that stuff. And we ended up taking her to a out of network, like it was a privately owned 24-hour emergency room. It wasn't with a hospital because we were just taking her to the closest place to our house. And so our insurance didn't cover it. And so a couple weeks after that, and by the way, my daughter ended up being completely fine. They gave her IVs, they kept her overnight, but she was completely fine. And a couple weeks later, I was sitting at the dinner table and we get a letter in the mail, and I open it and it's a $15,000 hospital bill. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting at the hospital bill, or not, sorry, not the hospital. I remember sitting at the dinner table and I was looking at this hospital bill and I felt like just a massive failure. As a father, as a husband, I wasn't providing the way that I wanted to provide for my family. And I didn't want to put my family through that for the rest of their lives. And so, it was literally that moment in the fall of 2018 that I decided I've got to do something else. I didn't know what that something else was. I have zero background in real estate. I have zero background in construction. I can't tell you the difference between a Phillips screwdriver and a flathead. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I was like, I just got to figure out something to make more money. And so, I start listening to every podcast that I can on just on building wealth. And over this time, like we're missing student loan payments. I miss a couple house payments. It's rough. But I start listening to this podcast, and somebody on the podcast makes the comment, which I don't even know if it's true, but he says something along the lines of 90% of millionaires, they self-made millionaires do it through real estate. And so I was like, I want to be a millionaire. And I was like, I'm going to get into real estate. And so I started exploring real estate, and I come across the Bigger Pockets podcast. And if a lot of people on here are real estate investors, they've probably heard of that podcast at some point. And I started listening to a guy named Brandon Turner. And Brandon Turner, he's sitting in his what he called his sea shed in Maui. And he's talking about how he has used real estate to provide this, life for his family, provide financial freedom to move out to Maui and live in Hawaii. And back up back up at this time, 2 years for our baby moon, my wife and I, we went to Kauai, and we spent like every penny that we had on this trip. Not a great financial decision. And this is, on the very last night, we're sitting there, and my wife's pregnant, and we have a kid coming in 4 or 5 months. And we're sitting there on the last night overlooking the ocean. My wife and I were talking, and we're like, we want to live here. It's paradise here. And then we kind of just laugh about it because we pull up our phone, we look at what the price of houses are, and we're like, there's no way we could ever afford to live here in Hawaii. And so, but that was always kind of like a dream of ours. And so then I start listening to Brandon in his sea shed talking about using real estate to move to Hawaii. And immediately I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like I want to live in Hawaii, and I want to use real estate to get there. And so I literally buy a 10X. Do you remember the 10X journals by Grant Cardone? Mm-hmm. I buy a 10X journal, and in that you write your goals every morning and every evening. And the very first thing I put every single morning and every single evening is live in Hawaii, live in Hawaii, live in Hawaii. And so start listening to that podcast, getting fired up about real estate. And then in the fall of 2019, we bought our very first property. And I'm still working at the church at this time. We buy our very first property. Everything goes wrong on that property. Literally everything goes wrong. And so we have our second kid at this time, like right before I actually put the house under contract while we were at the hospital with Callie having her, because that was when I was like, I've been talking about this now for a year and I just need to do it. And so I put a house under contract while we were at the hospital. We're flipping it. Everything goes wrong. We end up having to move in there. We have an air mattress, a 1-year-old, a newborn, and our dog. And my wife and I were painting walls. We're refinishing cabinets. I'm laying floor, and we're rehabbing the house. And we ended up getting out of that house, and we essentially break even on that house. But there was something about just doing it that made us so excited of like, we've got this. Even though we didn't make money on this house, like we know that we can do it, and we learned the process. And in January of 2020, we bought our second house, and everything went right on it. Was actually a Burr deal. We bought it at like 67. We put 35 into it. We got it appraised at $155,000. The bank gave us an 80% loan to value. So we actually were able to pull out like 115. So we even made a little bit of money. We put like 12 grand in the bank, and we had a cash flowing rental, and we're like, this is amazing. This is the best thing ever. And so we just went crazy. And so we started buying like literally every house that the numbers worked on. I was buying. I didn't know how to rehab them. I didn't have crews to rehab them. I didn't have money. We were hustling and figuring it out along the way. And at that time, actually, COVID hit, and the church that I was working at, they shut their doors for a couple of months. And so at that time, I was now a teaching pastor and was just hanging out with people. And because we weren't having services and we couldn't see people, I didn't really have a job anymore. I was still kind of getting paid. And so I was full time in real estate. I was putting 60, 70 hours a week into real estate. And I probably bought 30 houses over those 2 or 3 months that the church's doors were shut. And some of those, when I say 30 houses, some of those were flips. Probably half of those were wholesales. And then we kept a couple as rental property. So we weren't like getting in there and working on all 30 of them. But when the church went to open up back up their doors, I was like, man, real estate has been really good to me for the last couple of months. And so we decided that, hey, I'm gonna resign from the church and go full-time real estate. And so that was in May of 2020. So since May of 2020, I've been 100% all in on real estate. But kind of a fun part of the story is, and this is kind of what I think is so important is, we had a vision when we started, which was we wanted to live in Hawaii. We wanted to use real estate to build up passive income, to build up our reserves to where we could move to Hawaii. And then fast forward a year, we were doing pretty well. And I get invited to a Maui mastermind that Brandon is hosting. And I don't know Brandon at all at this time, but I'm like, we're going to go out there because I've been listening to Brandon for the last 3 years. He was kind of the reason that I got into real estate. And so I go out to Maui, and the very first night we have a little get together at Brandon's house, and then the next day, the very first session at the Maui Mastermind is a guy named Rich Fettke, and he takes you through this 5-year vision. And essentially he sits there and he's like, everybody close your eyes, and it sounds a little weird, but he's like, go fast forward 5 years into the future, and he's like, imagine the house that you're looking at. And like you walk up the stairs and you knock on the door and you open it, and the person on the other side of the door is you in 5 years. And he really takes the time of like, in detail, what does the house look like? What does that future you look like? What does the future you talk like, act like? And because I was at Brandon's house the night before, I was envisioning Brandon's house in Maui. I'm living in St. Louis at the time, but I was imagining like this Brandon's house, beautiful view of the ocean, sea shed, ohana. I was just imagining that house. And so then from that point on, every single morning, I start having coffee with myself and going and visiting myself 5 years in the future at Brandon's house. Or it's my house in that video. Like I'm sitting there, talking to the 5-year vision of myself, who is financially well, in a great spot, loves his wife, loves his kids. And I'm just envisioning that person. And what that did was, over the course of, these last couple of years, it realigned every single day. Like, hey, if I want to be that person, I've got to work hard. I've got to love my wife. I've got to love my kids. I've got to, work on myself. And so I'm doing that every single morning. over these last 5 years is just going and meeting myself at this future vision of what I want to be. And I think that's so important for people that are getting into real estate or anything, where if you don't have a vision of where you want to go, you're going to wander around aimlessly. And so I had this very clear vision of here's what I want. And so I started heading towards that at 100 miles an hour. So now fast forward a couple more years, and my wife and I, we've done probably 300 or 400 deals at this point. We have the money to move to Maui. So we move out here to Maui. I don't know Brandon very well at the time. But move out here to Maui and, start hanging out with Brandon, and, our real estate business has taken off. Everything's been really cool. A lot of fun. Brandon asked me to be a co-host on his podcast, which I think is just a full circle moment where it's like literally from the time of like the fall of 2018 till then, I'd been writing like live in Maui, live in Maui, live in Maui. And we ended up moving out to Maui. And then from 2021, I'm envisioning myself in this beautiful house overlooking the ocean. And it's all like coming together in this wild, wild way. One of the fun parts of this story is I had been literally since 2021, envisioning myself living in Brandon's house and, buying Brandon's house, and it's my house. And a really fun part of this story is when I was first starting real estate, 2018, I listened to Brandon in the Sea Shed talking about living in Maui. And last week we bought Brandon's house from him. And wow. I'm shooting this. Yeah, this is in the Sea Shed. So if you ever watch Bigger Pockets in the Sea Shed, this is the Sea Shed. And so I love this story just because of what real estate can do for you and what real estate did for me, where it's like I set this vision for our lives and for my family's life. And then we ran 100 miles an hour towards that vision, and it ended up working out. And it would have still been amazing if we didn't buy Brandon's house. But I think it's a really fun story of what having that mindset and that vision can do for you. So that's a long answer to your question about my story. But I wanted to share it because it's fun for me. And we just closed on it. So
that is insane. So we got a dude who's a youth pastor making $40,000 a year, had a kid, realized, dude, I got to be able to provide for my family, which happens to a lot of ministers, I have noticed. Yeah. This is something that a lot of them go through because a lot of times you just don't make a lot of money in the ministry. And they're like, holy crap, I got to provide for my family. Starts doing real estate, do it for a couple months during COVID, and you're like, holy crap, we just made a lot of money. We did 30 deals in 3 to 4 months. You're like, I'm going all in. Chips are going all in. I want to create a life of my dreams, which is living in Hawaii. You envision it for 5 years, take the actionable steps. And today, not only do you live in Hawaii, but you literally now are either do or you're about to live in the house that you envisioned of living in for all we live in it, dude.
We bought. So we bought.
We live in a simulation.
It feels like that. Yeah, we bought the house that I have literally been going to, and I know this sounds corny, but I've been going to and having coffee at this house with the future version of myself every single day since 2021. We bought that house that I was going to. And it's wild, and it doesn't make sense. But a couple other things, like when I'm doing that, and I think everybody should do it, even though it sounds really corny, is I'm also envisioning, like, in that scenario, I'm financially at a great spot. I love my wife. I love my kids. And so then every single day I'm realigning myself with what are the actions that I need to take today that align with that future vision of myself. And that means that, like, hey, I'm present with my kids. I'm loving towards my wife. I'm asking for forgiveness and forgiving my wife when we are butting heads. Like, I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing because I know that the future vision of myself is in that spot. And so it aligns my day with who do I want to be? And then I'm going to take those exact actions that I need to take to be that person, if that makes sense at all.
Totally amazing.
Yeah.
This is absolutely blows my mind. Cool. So I want to dig in more. And after the break, we're going to talk about the tactical steps you took to be able to do all those real estate deals.
Awesome.
Are you worried about your financial security in these unprecedented times? If you are, the next minute could profoundly impact your financial security. Imagine waking up to find the economy has plunged and your portfolio has plummeted 30 to 45%, while banks are in turmoil, holding your money hostage while waiting for FDIC intervention. Where would you turn? For many, this may sound like fiction, but it's a stark reality for those that have money on the line. Recently, America's awoke to both the NASDAQ and the Dow, plummeting over 1,100 points each and triggering a frenzy of sell-offs. History shows us how a single event can crash the market, like the dot-com bubble of 1999, the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008, and the pandemic of 2020. But today, we're facing multiple bubbles: commercial real estate, stock, bonds, and banks. Combined with the relentless inflation, the threat of global recession, the specters of war, and you have the perfect storm. The consequences could be catastrophic, plunging us into unprecedented crisis. America is sliding in the age of discord, with trust in institutions collapsing and the democratic norms unraveling. The quality of life for Americans has declined. Wealth is concentrated among the rich, while the median American family income stagnates, creating a dangerously top-heavy social pyramid. Moreover, hostile countries like Russia, China, and Iran are working to destroy the U.S. dollar. Gold is a no-matter-what store of wealth that you need. That's why Robert has been such an advocate of gold, and he trusts Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold is ready to help you incorporate physical gold as part of your portfolio and protect it against economic uncertainty. Visit protectwithrobert.com today to learn how you can qualify for up to $5,000 in free silver with a qualifying investment. Or give them a call at 844-3-ROBERT. Remember to mention Robert and Kim sent you when you contact Allegiance Gold. Secure your IRA or 401k today with Allegiance Gold. Visit protectwithrobert.com or call 844-3-ROBERT.
Hey guys, Jaren Sustar, host of the Rich Dad Real Estate Show and the Jaren Sustar Show here. If you're brand new and are serious about getting into real estate this year, or if you have a few properties and are serious about scaling your current portfolio, I've got something special for you. The Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I put together a free ebook that walks you step by step through how to buy your first or next investment property. Whether you're a complete beginner or you've done a few deals already, this guide is action-packed with proven strategies and tips that can help make you a smarter investor and make better investment choices. In this book, we're going to break down everything from finding the right property to financing options, and we even give you insight into how the pros are managing their real estate portfolios in today's market. And the best part, it's completely free. All you have to do is head to the link in the show notes below or go to yourfirstproperty.co to download it right now. I believe 2025 is going to be one of the best years for real estate investing that we've seen in recent history, and I do not want you to miss out. Plus, your future self is counting on you to make good decisions today so that they can live a great life later. So go to yourfirstproperty.co or click the link down in the show notes to grab your free ebook today. Welcome back to the Rich Dad Real Estate Show, where we're talking about the good news and bad news of real estate with Cameron Cathcart. Cameron, we were talking about setting vision before the break, and I mean, I hadn't heard that story. Obviously, it hadn't unfolded completely when I saw you in October. I think I said I saw you in Denver. It was Utah. Yeah. Sorry. Great time. But that is absolutely cool. And I was teaching to our students. We were doing a goal setting call a couple weeks ago. And you've heard these statistics, but I have them written down on this paper in front of me. I don't know why it's sitting here, but now I can use these data points. Only 30% of the population sets goals. Out of the 30% that set goals, only 1% of those actually write them down. But based on data, if you write them down, you're 42% more likely to achieve goals compared to if you don't write them down. So we got 30%, only 30% are even writing them, or excuse me, even coming up with goals. 1% of those are writing them down, and they're increasing their chances of accomplishing them by 42%. Right. And it's like, me and you both are Christians. We were talking about faith earlier. Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision and make it plain. I think it's very simple. Write the vision and make it plain. There is power in deciding what we want and then putting a plan together to go and accomplish it. Now, one thing that I would add, being a believer, is I think it's very important to coincide what we want with what God wants for us. And when we're doing both of those things and we're following his plan, then we go and we execute it. But once we know what that is, and you knew what it was, we have to write that down, and then we have to take the actionable steps. Things don't just happen, right? Not only did you do mindset, which is very important. I struggle with mindset. It takes a lot of discipline for me to do it, just with my personality. But I've learned that it's very important, and that type of discipline, whether it's a spiritual discipline or just a mindset discipline, is very, very huge for your future. You were doing that every day, but then also you went out and you did the nitty gritty. You're finding those deals, you're wholesaling deals, you're flipping deals, you're getting rentals. And you didn't just wait around and say, oh, it's gonna, my blessing's coming to me. My blessing's coming. You said, no, let's go make it happen. Yeah. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I wrote down my goals twice a day, every morning and night. And then I would go visit myself in the future when those goals had been accomplished. So like three times a day, really.
Yep. That's what that does. I don't believe in, and I'm going to open up a can of worms here. I don't necessarily believe in manifestation.
Neither do I.
So, y'all beat me up in the comments for that. But I think that you can put your mindset in a place to allow yourself to go accomplish goals that you want to set. So you do that. So I want to talk about tactical, like, all right, you got this youth pastor dude who's making $40,000 a year, and then all of a sudden he does 30 deals in 2 to 3 months. How in the world does that happen? Walk us through, like, bro, how, and you can even start with the first property if you want, or the first profitable, and then we can talk about how you scale from there. But like, what types of properties are we looking for? What was your go-to methods of finding those? How'd you fund them? All the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you just said. I don't believe in manifestation either. Like, even though all of that happened, the reason that it happened is because I put in the work. And I think the reason that I put in the work was because I had this goal for our family, and I knew that every single day I had to put in the work to get there. And so I want to be really clear with people. Like, it wasn't like I was just envisioning this and it just kind of all fell into place. No. I was working crazy hours when I first started. And I still work a lot of hours. I'm not this person that's like, oh, I've got my team built and I don't do anything anymore. No, I work a lot still. But I love it. I really enjoy it. But when I first started, so first house we bought from a bigger wholesaling company. And I think that the first house is a good, just a picture of your first deal doesn't always have to be a home run, because ours for sure was not. Where I bought it, and I think we bought it around $130,000, and I thought it was going to be a $300,000 house, and honestly, it probably would have been a $300,000 house. But I had this is going to cost us $35,000-$40,000 to get to a $300,000 house, and we had a contractor come through there. And the very first thing he told me was like, hey, what were you thinking was the rehab? And I said, $40,000. And he said, it's going to be about triple that to do what you want to do here, which was like take out walls, redo kitchens, redo bathrooms. He's like, you're going to lose money if you try and rehab this house the way that you want to rehab it. And so immediately my heart sank and I was like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? I just made the biggest financial decision of my life, and I made the wrong one. And so that is when we bought an air mattress and we moved into the house and we did the work ourselves. And we didn't.
Did you sell your previous house?
Well, I didn't have a house at the time. We were living at Lexi's parents' house.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of skipped over that, but I was in Denver when I was a youth pastor, and when I decided, hey, we want to get into real estate, I didn't know anything about real estate at all. I didn't know that I could have done probably what I did in St. Louis and Denver. And so I took a job as a teaching pastor at a church back in St. Louis, and we moved in the summer of 2019 back to St. Louis and was going to invest in real estate. And part of that move was we lived in Lexi's parents' house then, because we grew up in St. Louis, and so we didn't have a house, so moved in
the family and love.
Yeah. and we painted the walls, refinished the cabinets. We didn't do a full, like, we didn't do the rehab that I wanted to do to it, like, which was taking out walls and opening it up, because it was a house built in like 1913, I think. We didn't do that. It was a lipstick remodel. But we ended up selling it for, I think, $210,000. And we probably put in like $35,000 to $40,000 worth of work, which was originally my original rehab budget. And then if you had paid us for labor, it would have been a lot more. And we ended up, honestly, after just supplies, and we did hire some stuff out that we didn't know how to do, like electrical and some plumbing and whatnot. We broke even on that house. But again, I think that was what, like, got us super excited, because it showed that we could do it. And I think that was really important to us, is like, we knew after that, hey, we can do it. We didn't make money on this, but we can do this. And also, we learned so much over that process of, like, hey, what does hard money look like? What does private money look like? What does setting up insurance, utilities, all of these things that you have to know? Like, we learned that in that first deal. And it's kind of like we were paying for knowledge. And honestly, we broke even, so we didn't have to pay for it, but we broke even for knowledge. And after that one, we decided, hey, we're gonna kind of go for it. And so then we bought our second one, that we bought from another wholesaling company. And that one went really, really well. And then we just started buying houses left and right. But one of the things that I personally got really, really great at was finding deals. And so if you want, like, the tactical of how we built our business, my wife and I, we built it together. So it wasn't just a one-man show. It was me and my wife. And we had a really great synergy where my job was literally everything until the contract is signed. And then she would handle contract to close, and she was our project manager. And so I got really, really great at finding deals. And at the beginning, we weren't doing direct to seller marketing. And so my job was, I found leads, what I call from connectors. And that is wholesalers, real estate agents, property management companies, probate attorneys, senior living facilities, junk removal companies, mold remediation companies, anybody that comes across a distressed house, potentially, like, I wanted them to know who I was, and I wanted to be the first person that they called. And so I was at every meetup in St. Louis. I was there with my business cards. I was the first one to show up, the last one to leave, shaking hands. Honestly, like, the being a pastor served me really well in this, because that's what I used to do. Like, I would just, at the church, I was in the lobby, shaking hands, talking to people, smiling. That was my thing as a pastor. And so I just would do that at meetups, and I would make relationships with people. Then the next day I would have a stack of business cards. I would go through them. I'd call them all personally, thank them for the conversation the night before. I'd ask them to go out to coffee, meet with them. I would tell them, hey, here's what I'm looking for. If you have anything, let me know. And I just got leads being fed to me from that. And I really built that system out really well, where I had, we used Podio, and I had in my Podio, like, here are the like, what I call the platinum connectors. And those would be probably more so wholesalers and real estate agents, the ones that I'm going to buy a lot of houses from. And then I had and so those people I'm talking to multiple times a week. Pocket listings a lot from real estate agents, and then the wholesalers, what they have, like, direct to seller, because a lot of them were doing direct to seller marketing. And then I had my gold level connectors, which I might buy, let's say, 5 houses a year from those people. And I'm talking to those people once every couple of weeks. And then I had my silver level, and I'm talking to those once a month. And those people I might buy 1 to 2 houses from a year. And then I had my what I would call bronze level, which, hey, I might buy a house from them. I might not, but they're good to be in my network. And those I'm talking to once a quarter. And so I had that in my Podio. And so I would follow up every single day. First thing I would do is I'd sit down and I would make sure that I'm going through that entire list and doing my follow-ups. And from doing that, man, I got so many leads. And so I think there's this, in the single family space, especially, there's this, thought that, oh, I can't be successful unless I do direct to seller marketing. Mm-hmm. And, I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. I think most people, the connector leads is the way that you should start. And then once you start making money, yeah, you can put money into direct mail or cold calling or PPC, PPL, whatever it is you want to put into, but you can find deals just from your community and from your network.
Dude, I've done it all. There's no better way to get leads, in my opinion, than what you're saying, than through the connectors. And it's free.
Yeah.
It's free. People are like, oh, I don't have money to pay for deals. Don't pay for them. Go make connections. Do everything you just said. It is literally completely free. It just takes some sweat equity. And I'm telling you, man, we've done PPC. I've hired cold call. I've done it all. And there's deals that come from all of them. But those connector leads are absolutely fantastic. I've got 3. I was telling you before the show, I got 3 deals I'm working right now for a total of 26 units. I hope to have them. I'll have 2 locked up today, and I hope to have the 3rd locked up by the end of the week. One of them came from an investor-friendly agent from a brokerage that I'm friends with, that I've built a relationship with over time. It was a pocket lead. They brought it to me. Another investor owned it. While I was running comps on it, I saw 15 other homes listed for sale in that area, and I was like, that's kind of odd. I bet it's an investor, because I was trying to find comps, and I look, it was an investor who owns 15 units, called a lady, and they're trying to sell a portfolio. So that's MLS, right? And then the third was the only one that came from direct to sell marketing. I was driving by a home that looked, I think it was like vacant or whatever, and hit send mail, and they called me back. And so 2 out of my 3 are just connectors or from literally being listed on the internet. And that is 24 units right there. And so I've been doing this a long time. You've been doing this a long time. Combined, we've done a lot of different deals. You don't have to get fancy. It just takes some relationship. Every business is based on trust and relationships. And so if you'll take the time to build the relationships with the players who are already in the game, and then build that trust over time, and then actually do deals when numbers make sense, dude, you can get fed really, really well. You get fed good enough to move to Maui.
Yeah.
I'm even, you know.
my first year, we did not do direct to seller marketing and did over 100 houses.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not completely true, because I took a job too with another, like a bigger wholesaling company. I think you know him, Sam. And so I was working with Sam, and he was doing some direct to seller marketing. So, but I probably bought 70 houses my first year, just straight from connectors. And so you can do that. You can make a lot of money just from connectors. And I think, like, when we're talking about connectors, a lot of people, they don't understand, like, it doesn't mean, hey, I found a bunch of people on Facebook and I sent out a blast text message saying, hey, do you have any deals? No, that's not how I've done it. I'm making relationships with all of them. I'm building personal relationships to make them know, like, and trust me. And so then when they come across a deal, they want to sell that to me. Like a fun story. And this was in my first year. One of my biggest deals ever. It was I don't remember how many houses within the portfolio, but it was from a property management company. And so one day I was sitting around and I was like, who would have deals that they could sell me? And that was the fun part about connector leads too, is like when I'm not having leads come in, like, it's creative, like who potentially is coming across deals that they could potentially sell you. And so in my mind, I was like, property management companies, they have clients that have portfolios that want to sell their houses all the time. And so I went and drove around to all the property management companies in St. Louis, introduced myself, and just said, hey, if any of your clients ever want to sell their portfolio, I would love to know about it before you list on the market or anything like that. There was this one lady that I talked to, and she was super nice. And she was telling me about how on Tuesday nights that she plays in a senior women's softball league. And then afterwards they go to Applebee's, and all of the ladies, get margaritas and, have dinner together. And so we're just having conversation. And I remembered that. And so the next Tuesday I went to Applebee's and I bought a $25 gift card, and I went to her office and I handed it to her and I was like, hey, thank you so much for the conversation last week. I wanted to buy your dinner tonight. And I gave her the Applebee's gift card. 2 or 3 days later, she calls me and she has this package where she had actually somebody who didn't live in the country owned this portfolio of houses that wanted to sell it. And I ended up locking it up and wholesaling it for a $70,000 spread. And that just goes back to like being a good person, getting to know people, investing in people's lives, and that will come back to you. And that's how I've made my money in real estate.
It's all relationship based. I love that story. Going the extra mile, doing a little bit more than the next person and caring for people will open so many doors for you. And that's a lesson in life, no matter what industry you're in. How'd you do a lot of funding of these deals? So I know you wholesaled a lot. So you guys, will you go to find these deals through connectors or direct sell or direct to mark seller? And then, sometimes you would sell them off, but the ones you kept, how did you go about funding, let's say, your flips?
Yeah. So a lot of that was hard money. In St. Louis, there's an incredible company. They only lend in St. Louis, but it's called Faster Funds Lending. And if you found a deal deep enough, they would lend 100% of the purchase and the rehab if you were at 70%. And because I was buying everything off market, got really good at finding deals, I would find a lot of deals that match that criteria. So I didn't have to bring any money to the table on a lot of these deals. But so I used Faster Funds. And then I also was able to, one of the things I'm really good at is just building relationships. And so I was able to build up a pretty substantial amount, about $1 million in private money really quickly. And so I would use private money at times if I couldn't get the funding from the hard money lender, or sometimes if I was over that 70% mark, where I was at like 75, 78%, and I needed some sort of gap funding, I would use private money to cover that gap funding. And then I would use hard money for the rest.
There's so much funding available. It's one of the things I stress often is it's plentiful. It's almost unlimited. And so I preach, if you can get good at finding good deals, the money will come as long as you're not a terrible person and you build those relationships. And if you're taking the time to build relationships to find deals, then there's a good chance that you're going to end up running into someone outside of a hard money lender. Hard money lenders are companies who will lend to you for deals, but being able to build those relationships with a private lender or two, which is somebody in your network, whether it's friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, who will also lend to you as well. And I'll tell you, man, just having one of those to start can completely change your life. And then the more deals you do, the more reputation, the more your reputation grows. And then people start literally coming to you. I have a lot of people that I work with who make high incomes that reach out to me all the time. Hey, when are you going to let me get in on a deal? And because they know that I know what I'm doing. It's interesting how the doors open over time. But at the beginning, it's just like finding deals. Let's get out there, build those relationships, earn trust. And then, dude, once you have funding, man, oh man.
Dude, it's a rocket ship, dude. And you said this, and it's exactly because I think the question that I get the most from new investors is, how do I fund deals? And my response is, if you have a good deal, the money's easy. I've honestly never struggled with finding money. I've struggled with finding deals at times, but I've never struggled with finding money, because if I have a good deal, the money's easy to get. A hard money lender is going to lend on it. It's easy to bring in gap funding for that $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, whatever it may be that I need, because it's a good deal and I can show them on paper like, hey, here's the purchase price, here's the rehab, here's the ARV, here's our safety net if it doesn't sell where I want it to sell at, or if the rehab goes over. And I've never struggled with money, but I think that's because I've always been really good at finding deals.
I love it. Cam, thanks for being on today. I got one last question. It's kind of off topic of real estate, but it's a question that I think about often, and I love to ask thought-provoking questions, maybe if they don't completely do real estate. So when it comes to faith and money, how does one balance, and how would you talk with somebody who's struggling with, hey, how do I strive for more? How do I want to achieve more, buy real estate, build wealth without crossing that line of loving money and keeping my focus on the main things? And that could be, even if you aren't a faith-driven person, There's
Yeah.
other things in life that you could be allowing money or success to pull you away from. I live in a small town, and so talking about money is taboo anyways.
Mhm.
And so you can imagine I'm in this fishbowl in the Southeast, and I don't have a large brand, but I got a big enough brand where everybody in town kind of knows this guy likes to talk about money and real estate, right? And so you can kind of get a stigma about you, which is fine. I know in my heart how I feel about success and money and real, so it doesn't bother me, but it makes me think thoughts of like, okay, how do we teach people to be able to balance both of these without going too far in the wrong direction of chasing things that are all going to wither away one day?
Dude, that's such a great question, and we could do an entire podcast on that question. But what I would say, first of all, I struggled with that, especially when I first started, because you always hear the especially in the Christian, religious background, like the story of the rich young ruler, where he says, it's harder for why am I blanking on this? For a wealthy man a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a wealthy man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so I always struggled with that. But honestly, is when you read the Bible as a whole, you see multiple times where, like, dude, some of like the absolute studs for the kingdom of God were also the richest men in the world. Like, you've got Job, you've got David, you've got Solomon, you've got Moses, you've got
Abraham.
Abraham. You've got time and time again where it is these very wealthy men that are doing incredible things for the kingdom. And so I honestly don't think that that's true. I do think that the love of money is tough. And so for me, I guess what I have decided is, like, as long as I'm aligned with what I believe God is calling me to do, and as long as I'm continuing to give back, and as long as I'm continuing to bring other people with me, like, then I feel good about it. And one of the things that I would say with that is, like, I 100% believe that God calls us to be our best in every single thing that we do. And that is naturally a lot of times going to be rewarded with some sort of financial increase. Like, if you are the best at your job, even if you're a janitor at a school and you're the best at it, you're going to get promoted, and you're going to get promoted, and you're going to get promoted, and money is going to follow that. If you are the best, like in real estate, what I'm doing, and I'm working hard because I believe that God calls us to work hard, you're going to be rewarded for that. And there's this incredible parable in the Bible where it's called the parable of the talents, where this ruler, he gives three guys a talent. Let's just say gives three guys $100 or $1,000. I don't know what it correlates with in today's money, but and one guy, he goes and buries that money. And one guy goes and doubles it. And I think one guy goes and 10X's it. And then years later, they come back to the ruler, and the guy that buries money gives back the $100, and the ruler is very unhappy with him. And then the guy who doubles it, and I'm butchering the story, and I don't remember what the ruler says to the guy who doubles the money, but the guy who 10X's the money, the king looks at him and super proud of him and says, like, well done, my good and faithful servant. And I believe, like, if we are doing what God has called us to do, like, we need to be multiplying time and time again. And so I want that for my life. I want that for my family. I want that for my business. I want to continue to multiply and to grow, because healthy things grow. And if I am healthy, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, my business is going to grow, and my finances are going to continue to grow. And to be honest, like, I think one of the things is you have to look at yourself and realize, like, if all of that got taken away from me tomorrow, I promise you, I would still be the same person I am right now. And I think that's where that my identity is not in money. My identity is not in that I live in Hawaii. My identity is not in that I have a, $15 million rental portfolio. My identity is not in any of that. My identity is in Christ and my family and being a good dad. And money is just this thing that is happening because I work hard and I'm growing our company. But if that got taken away for some reason, I would not change at all. And so I think that's the delineating factor is like, I don't care about money, but I work hard. And because of that, the money comes.
I think
makes sense all?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think wealth can help actually remove selfishness if you allow it. Think about this. If you are broke, you're constantly, from a financial standpoint, having to think about yourself. How am I going to provide for myself? How am I going to do this for my family? When you have wealth, as long as you're a good person, you can now stop thinking so inwardly in that particular area of your life and go bless others. Because I think people who have been blessed are in a position and almost have a mandate to go help those who aren't as fortunate. Cameron, it's been fantastic having you on the show today, man. Where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more from you?
Yeah, I think the best option is probably just Instagram. So it's cam.cathcart, CATHCART. Follow me on there and shoot me a DM if you want to chat more.
Awesome. Cam, thanks for being on, dude. You're awesome. Love hanging out with you. And I hope to do this again soon.
Dude, I'd love that. It's been a blast.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Rich Dad Real Estate Show, where I talked with Cameron Cathcart, and he went from being a youth pastor to doing over 500 deals in real estate and absolutely changing his life and living the life of his dreams in Hawaii. You can't beat that. Guys, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, grab the free ebook that Robert and I put together for you guys, How to Buy Your First and Next Investment Property. It's going to give you everything you need to succeed in real estate in 2025. Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.